Thanks so much, Lachlan, and really great pleasure to be here today. And thanks for CDO for inviting me. I hope you're all well today. And I'm also in lockdown at the moment in Sydney, and so therefore, we've been, living this sort of re-lockdown since I've moved from Singapore a couple of months back, and that being my normal base. But today, I wanted to take you through some interesting ideas around what we're seeing across the market and in Asia Pacific. The main purpose here is to hopefully give you some ideas as to how you can help transform and your priorities in 2022. I'm going to touch on the changing behaviors, the trends, and also how we respond. So we all know the world has changed. And I'm not sure about you, but the number of boxes coming in my front door has dramatically changed over the last year. This graphic really depicts the narrative that you heard around how much e-commerce has really impacted our day-to-day lives. The message being, if you don't have a digital strategy, it's something you must really be looking at. And it's not just for goods companies, but also services companies and how we manage and leverage across the future ecosystems. 10 years ago, many of us may not have been using this QR code. It was promoted on bus stops. We were trying to get people to use it to engage. But I think now all of us are very familiar with this. Coming from markets where you have to scan to get into a shop every day, this behavioral shift has lowered that barrier to entry around digital technologies. And what was once challenging for people to use is something that we all use every day. That being is that there's a lot of changing engagement activities that have taken place due to COVID that all of us have now built into our behavior, day-to-day expectations. If you look at this graph on the left, it's also changed the way we buy and what we buy. And you've seen many companies pivot to online alcohol sales, but also restaurants where the reservations in the restaurants weren't taking place, but the move to virtual and online. Again, the move to a digital strategy has really impacted. And the point being, all of us are really familiar with now using digital engagement tools via our phones, via our smart devices and desktops. And when you see this quote, it's obviously there's a bit of humor around that quote that I'm sure you've all heard. But actually, when you reflect on what that means, I personally would say my mum would never have been using Zoom or these video technologies, but now many of them are familiar. But what does that actually mean in terms of adoption? Doctor consults are now a lot easier, the barrier to entry around those areas. And the point being is that because of all these changing behaviors, the avenue to engage has dramatically changed. The frictionless environment that we live in and the high velocity expectation of what we expect to see day to day has significantly changed the way we work. So if you look at this slide here, KPMG did a survey during early 2021 on CEOs, both before and during the pandemic. And interestingly, you can see the underline of what really came out to bear as really important. And you can see the digital technology ranking up number one, onboarding new digital technology, disruptive technologies, using that to increase market share to combat the digital natives, and interestingly, evolving the business models to shift in how we operate. So in all these areas, we have something to think around how our business operates and how we transform. If you look at the trends, be it 5G and IoT that you're hearing a lot about, or cloud and AI, you can see that all these areas are really imposing the way that we work day to day and our businesses operate. But countries around the world are really trying to innovate and drive creative business models and enable business models in their nation. Governments and are really looking at regulations around how do they treat data, how do they govern data, and how do they enable the way that data flows and is basically joined to enable new businesses to operate. But in the context of sustainability environment, how we grow matters. We all know technology and the amount of energy required to cool a data center is one of the most expensive energy consuming sectors in the world. So what we are seeing is the move towards off-grid sourcing of energy, or arranging other environmental factors that help us offset the amount of carbon that we're actually producing. So I want to share some key trends that we're seeing in the market, and hopefully this will give you a bit of insight around some particular ideas that may help you relook at your 2022 agenda. One of the key trends we're seeing is sector convergence, and we're seeing sector convergence predominantly around the big tech companies. No longer are they looking at a customer or us within the sector. They're looking at us to engage across every single area, be it banking, insurance, health, home. And their platform enables them to be able to go direct to us and engage with the consumer in a very different way. This is resulting in the traditional banks, insurance, health companies trying to pivot and move around and try different ways of engaging. We all know the classic example here, but as I look across the region and work with clients across the region, we're seeing companies like Facebook invest in one of the biggest telcos in India. We're seeing banks move into different services as well. We're seeing telecom companies in areas work into insurance. And if you're not sure, recently in Singapore, Singtel and Grab, which is the Uber of Asia, just won a digital banking license. We're also seeing companies like telcos in Australia move into energy and basically look at batteries in the home or solar panels in the home. So this whole pivot in convergence driven by data will enable that real-time experience, the ability to engage across sector and really target a consumer in a different way. Imagine now we're all at home. Imagine now if there was a product and service that basically gave you a smart lock and packaged home insurance. How would that work? Well, we all know that when we're at home, burglaries drop. So what if the information coupled with video analytics created an instance where you had reduced home insurance premiums based on facts of where people are and where people are not? This is a classic example of how companies actually are packaging solutions and offering technology with cross sectors to enable them to offer different experiences in the home. Another one, which I'm sure you're very which you're very familiar with, is how an IoT device that measures either your blood pressure or your heartbeat can be packaged to incentivize you to exercise more and in turn enjoy lower health premiums. The point being is these are driving examples of convergence, and many clients that I'm working with are trying to look at how do they work cross-sector using data to enable new business models. The other one that we're very much aware of is the race to consumer. You know, we're all at home. So there's the race to the home now in terms of how do we interact. The channels to market that we're all familiar with differ by the countries that we're in. We're seeing a lot more activity around how do I target specific areas using those channels to engage with the customer. And in the past, we were only quite linear in the way that we would think around engaging with the client. So the point being here is that there are permutations that we need to consider. We've been working with TikTok in the region, who have been working a lot on B2B. And the point being is that it's not just a fun video. It's a way of introducing a new brand, a new product, and via a hashtag campaign, creating over 800 million video views is something that they're looking to do with multinationals across the region and engaging the millennials in different ways. And these can be fun and engaging ways with a brand context behind that. And often you buy the brands that you observe versus the actual product that you're actually promoting. This is the topic which is quite interesting, and been spending a bit of time with this across Asia Pacific, and it's around consumer hyperlocalization. As data is more democratized and agile, you're better able to engage with them in a real-time way, in a hyperlocal way. If you look at preferences and how people buy, and this is applicable to any market, there are certain factors when you're selling a product that people think around, and each of these individuals that you can see may have their own personal preferences. But as we start to think around technology and we start to think around what we're using day to day, as mentioned on the previous slide, each of us have separate hyperfactors. We have personal values that change the way we engage, for example, ESG or social. On the right-hand side, you're seeing ecosystem preferences, because the way we engage in Singapore or China or Malaysia or Taiwan or Korea or Australia all have different ecosystems. And the more time you spend in a country, you'll start to realize that those ecosystem preferences and the way you operate determine how you engage. So a one size fits all when it comes to technology is not always going to work. So the ability to enable your data models to target specific instances or ecosystems, cross-sector and cross-ecosystem and cross area of focus is really what we're looking at here. And that hyperlocalization creates a high velocity ability to engage on new products. So how does this impact our 2022 priorities? If you look at this image and I ask you, who are you as a company? Are you the big fish or are you the small fish? I think 10 years ago, we would have seen the smaller digital natives being chased. But I think, now the tech giants have now emerged to be the bigger fish. And I think this race to become a digital native is the point I'm making here. The speed at which companies can evolve and transform is going to be absolutely critical for the future. And each of us are continuing to be on this journey, racing away from the fish that's chasing us or trying to stay ahead of the pack. So what does that race to digital native actually mean? And what we're seeing now is that the customer interactions are going to be driving the future of where we adopt change and where we need to change. We're seeing, as previously explained, the new digital engagement models are leading the front office, the customer, and those experiences that need to be adapted and transformed into our organization is the number one point that we need to start looking at. Keeping an eye on what's happening outside and how do we bring new ideas in. Once understanding that, redefining those operating models so that the front office leads the middle and back office transformation. Leveraging new technology, as you know, it's not about the tech, but it's about how we use that technology to drive those engagement and those real experiences that we want. Connecting those elements seamlessly through the business and delivering with agility. Fast prototyping, scale business models is the way we're seeing large enterprises transform. When we look at the customer journey now, and this is where we're starting to see more emphasis around, is the front office. Who is the person in the middle that you're targeting? Be it client external or be it internal in your own organization. What are the data sets that can bring value to them? In the past, we were very linear and siloed around data sets. But what we're now seeing is that combined data sets start to really change the way things operate. For example, if I built a data feed that said to me, tell me who using Facebook public data has just moved a new home, that creates an opportunity. Tell me who's just gotten a new job and been promoted in LinkedIn. That's an opportunity. Because we know that when people get promoted, often they want to spoil themselves or buy a new home or buy a new house. Those instances of data combined with your existing data sources create value on the right. And the value on the right really drives into either new business and growth, value and efficiency and cost, or compliance, risk and reporting. Purpose around the individual, the data source, and the value on the right is absolutely critical in driving where you invest your use cases and how you basically design your future transformation. And given the context of the last year and a half, it's a great opportunity to relook at how things have changed and how you need to pivot into your new business models. This slide really tries to depict on a page your phase one of digital transformation. If you think through the verticals, you could understand and appreciate how each of these boxes is an individual use case. What does that look like for you? Have you captured those in terms of growth, efficiency, and new business models? Imagine architecting that in a way that is systematic and measurable. Imagine layering layers of these use cases over time, and then mapping your technology roadmap on the bottom to enable each phase of transformation. This is what we call the connected enterprise model. And that connected enterprise model focuses now on bringing the front office needs, the new monetization, the new ecosystems, data as a new currency, understanding that customer journey, and then leveraging the middle and back office. How do I redesign the way of working? How do I become a digital native? How do I become data-driven? And how do I leverage new technology to leverage and bring to life our transformation step by step, but at scale? So I'd like to sort of leave on a few talk points, on a few messages here. Number one, and no surprise, is custom first. But the point being hyper-local. I think as we start to segment each market, and what we're seeing in markets like Australia, is that the way each of us operate and the way our customers want to operate will evolve. And so understanding your customer set and what does that persona look like and what they need and how they're operating is absolutely critical. Business alignment and being hyper engaged. We really think that the front office first is going to be being really important to leverage the back office and middle office. In the past, IT projects were very middle back office, ERP, CRM. But now what we're seeing is that the front office needs to understand technology and the back office needs to understand the business. So how do we align that more effectively? And last but not least is technology and people agility, being hyper aware of the situation, working hand in hand with the business, redesigning our technology architecture to be future-proof. And the point being is that the market has changed. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us to be focusing more on the client, more on the customer, aligning our business and ensuring our technology and our data principles that we're putting in place can be scalable for the future. So I hope that inspired you some ideas. And I really appreciate you having me here today. I will hand it back to you, to Lachlan. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but thanks again. Back to you, Lachlan.
Thanks, Darren. There is a question that's come in on the Q&A. If anybody else wants to jump in, please just put your question down in the Q&A. But just to your point on the theme of convergence, Darren, what are the implications, if any, that you see for collaboration and co-opetition? I mean, obviously, those TikTok is interesting example. Does that mean that you can see a company like TikTok collaborating with other big corporates, a health company, a bank? Is that the way that you see things are going?
Yeah, I see. I mean, it's a great question, and thank you for who asked that. I see in terms of TikTok and the collaboration of TikTok being more of an enabler on a route to market. So TikTok historically has been very much engaged with the millennials. And when we all watched it, we were like, what's this big deal around all these guys shooting videos? But I'll give you an example. A health company and insurance company sponsored TikTok on a hashtag around healthy eating. And there was a promotion run around it and there was money behind it. And I saw a funny video where the heading was something like, the doctor told me to lower my sugar intake. And there was an image of a lady moving a bag of sugar off from one shelf to the next. And obviously a lot of laughter in the background. And the point being is that that's humor, but it's linked and sponsored to a health objective and a brand. And someone playing with that TikTok or doing that TikTok instance and getting rewarded for that, X million views, there's a branding understanding that basically goes with the association that comes with that brand and an affinity to that brand. So that's the TikTok side. On the point of convergence, I'm seeing that basically the digital natives, and particularly we're seeing in Asia, the boundaries of which they can operate is really just writing an app and engaging, right, with the consumer. And in theory, you can be selling anything to anyone through a phone if you just be able to code. That barrier to entry is low, and they don't think of it as a sector. That the future of digital payments, the future of cryptocurrency, the future of blockchain, the future of all these things that you're seeing now is really changing the way we operate. And so whilst we all may be sitting in a sector, what you're certainly seeing is cross-sector engagement, where telcos want to become a 20 times valuation by acting more like a bank or an insurer or a health company. And those are some examples of that, and vice versa. So hopefully that answers your question there. And the bottom line is that valuations of companies are increasing as they move cross-sector, and valuations of data is going to increase, i.e., you could almost see data as a balance sheet item, an asset.
Yeah.
You use that well.
We have two questions for the floor, which I'll get to in a moment. But my other question was about the hyperlocal thing. Now, obviously, I'm locked down. I'm ordering food from my local cafes, my local restaurants to support them, going to my local restaurants. I can't go 5 kilometers away from my home. Why do you think that that's going to be an enduring theme post-COVID?
I think data makes you understand things better. So, for example, and I'll go back to the Amazon example. We saw them selling books, then we're selling products. And when you start to see data of what people buy, be it in a supermarket or an online store, that's pivoted them into making their own products. And there's a bit of like the Aldi effect where they've got their own brands. So when you know what people are buying and what they want, it starts to create opportunity to engage in different ways and sell things differently. So the knowledge of what the customer wants, the frequency, and what their preferences are makes a big difference. So, for example, Lachlan, if we know what you like to eat, the cuisines that you like to eat, or where you like to travel, or the information, those instances provide input and data inputs for a company that wants to engage with you in a more meaningful way. So, those curated data experiences based on facts is really what we're seeing as basically the way of hyper engaging in a more one-to-one way. In a population of 20 million, you're not talking around 20 million instances. You're talking about packages of hundreds of thousands of people. So rather than having one campaign for 20 million people, you could be running 20 individual campaigns that are slightly different based on the information you see and know, and in a more real-time way. So those are the ways that we're seeing how data models are being implemented at a segmented way from a customer hyperlocalization way.
Excellent. Now, we have a couple of questions that have come in on the Q&A. I think we're only going to have time for one. Darren, maybe I could ask you to have a look at those offline and respond to the participants offline. But we have one from Charles Palmer, which I'll put to you now. Is the primary issue with information the ability to improve quality, value, and viability in an organization? Machine learning or AI is not a substitute for a clear understanding of our data and its context in an enterprise.
In short, Charles, I think as many of us who work in technology, the garbage in, garbage out anecdote kind of comes to bear. So that goes back to the quality of data. In terms of value and viability in an organization, I really see the example I mentioned around combining data sets and ensuring that when you understand that a CRM piece of data, an ERP piece of data, and maybe a real-time data feed combined gives you an opportunity to engage. So the value needs to go back to the user and who you're trying to engage with. If it's internally the CFO in your organization, or if it's a client externally, a customer, the sales teams, let's say, and how they engage. So really ensuring that the person you've identified, the value that you're trying to match with the data, all those pieces match up. And that information is given, I would think, in a real-time way. I think we're all expecting, you can't wait for a report now. You kind of want it instantly. We're so used to watching the Uber driver drive to our home and watch something get delivered. We're not going to be waiting 24, 48 hours for a report. So that expectation and threshold changes. So I think, that the quality, the value, and viability, I think all of those link quite strongly. I don't think ML and AI will just do that. AI and ML will really enhance and support those principles that you put in place and do those more quickly and more intuitively over time. So for example, how do I predict the next best action or what someone wants next? Could be a basis, but I think you need to get the foundation right before you're starting to apply AI and ML.
Excellent. Darren, thank you so much for that. I did have a question about the big fish and the small fish, but perhaps that'll have to wait for another time. So Darren from KPMG, thanks so much for your opening keynote. It's really set the scene for the rest of the day. Thank you so much.